Naledi was in her hotel room in Accra, going through her presentation slides for the next morning, when her phone started buzzing. It was her neighbor from Cape Coast, Auntie Efua, the kind of woman who never called unless it was serious. Naledi answered, a little out of breath. "Hello, Auntie, everything okay?" There was a pause, then a worried voice on the other end. "Naledi, there's a moving truck outside your house. Men are taking furniture out, big things. Sofas, boxes, even your father's old desk." Naledi's heart skipped. "What? That's impossible. No one should be there." She stood up so fast her laptop almost fell off the table. Her father's house wasn't just property. It was the one place that still smelled like him. The cedar floors, the photo wall she built herself, the backyard he used to water every morning. She quickly called her stepsister, Aisha. It rang twice before Aisha picked up, sounding calm, almost cheerful. "Oh, don't panic," Aisha said lightly with a little laugh. "I'm just making changes. You'll thank me later." Naledi froze. "Making changes? What does that mean? Who gave you permission to?" But Aisha had already hung up. Naledi stared at her phone, her pulse racing. Something was terribly wrong. She could almost picture the truck outside, strangers walking through her father's home like it was theirs. For the first time in years, she felt that cold, sinking fear in her stomach, the kind that told her this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was betrayal. Naledi still remembered the day her father remarried. She was 10, quiet, shy, and still learning how to braid her own hair. The wedding was small, held in their backyard in Cape Coast, with white plastic chairs and loud music that drowned out her. Her new stepmother had a daughter, Aisha, 2 years older. From the moment Aisha smiled that perfect practiced smile, everyone seemed to adore her. Aisha had a sweet voice and always said the right things. She wore pretty dresses with matching ribbons and never got her hands dirty. The adults called her such a good girl, and Naledi would just nod along, even when she knew better. While Naledi was the one fixing things, helping her father with his building plan, and trying to make everyone happy, Aisha had already learned the art of getting what she wanted without asking twice. It was small things at first, taking the last slice of cake, claiming the better room, being excused from chores. Naledi noticed, but she stayed quiet. Her father's laugh, the way he said, "You two are sisters now," kept her from complaining. She didn't want to disappoint him. Years passed, and the house grew quieter. Her father grew older, and the warmth in their home slowly faded. When he passed away, Naledi felt like a part of her childhood had been buried with him. But he had left one thing behind, his house, the place he'd built brick by brick. The will was clear, it belonged to Naledi. At first, her stepmother had nowhere else to go, so Naledi told her she could stay for a while. "It's okay," she said softly, even though part of her wanted space to grieve alone. Aisha was married by then and soon moved in too, bringing her husband and baby. Naledi told herself it was temporary, just until they got back on their feet. But months turned into years. Whenever Naledi visited, she noticed changes. Her father's old armchair replaced with flashy furniture, new curtains, strange people coming in and out. Her own framed photo from university disappeared from the hallway. And every time she mentioned moving them out, Aisha's smile turned sharp. "Oh, come on, Naledi," she'd say. "This house is too big for one person. Besides, you live in Accra now. We're just taking care of it. Taking care of it." That phrase stuck like a thorn. The home her father built, the one she'd painted, renovated, and held close to her heart, had slowly become theirs. They stopped asking permission, stopped pretending it wasn't permanent. It had always been this way, Naledi realized. Aisha took, and everyone let her. Maybe because she did it with a smile. Maybe because no one ever challenged her. But this time, something in Naledi's chest burned hotter. She didn't know it yet, but the quiet girl who always gave in was about to stop being quiet. Naledi didn't even wait to finish her work trip. She booked the first bus back to Cape Coast, her heart pounding the entire way. Every bump in the road made her stomach twist tighter. She kept replaying Auntie Efua's call in her mind, trying to convince herself it was all a misunderstanding. Maybe Aisha was renovating, maybe she had permission. But deep down, she knew something wasn't right. When she finally arrived, the sun was already setting, painting the sky orange and gold. From the corner of the street, she spotted her house, or what used to be her house, and her breath caught. The front gate was locked with a brand new silver padlock. Inside the yard, people she didn't recognize were moving around, hanging balloons, setting up chairs, blasting music. Trays of food and crates of drinks were stacked high. It looked like a celebration. Naledi pushed the gate, but it didn't budge. She rattled it hard. "Hey, excuse me. What's going on here?" she shouted. A young man carrying a cooler glanced at her. "Sorry, madam, this is private property." Private property. Her chest tightened. Then she saw her, Aisha, standing in the middle of the compound, wearing a sparkling gold dress and holding a glass of champagne like a queen. She was laughing, surrounded by guests, her makeup perfect, her smile wide. Naledi's blood boiled. "Aisha," she yelled. The music faded as a few heads turned. Aisha looked up, startled for a moment, then smiled. That same fake sweet smile Naledi had known all her life. "Oh, you're here early," Aisha said, walking over slowly, her heels clicking against the tile. "What is this?" Naledi demanded. "Why is there a party in my house? And why is my gate locked?" Aisha waved her hand like it was no big deal. "Relax, Nail. The new owner said I could have one last celebration before handing over the—" Naledi blinked, her mind trying to catch up. "New owner," she whispered. "What new owner?" Aisha tilted her head, her lips curling into a smirk. "Oh, didn't I tell you? I sold the house. You weren't using it anyway. It was just sitting here." Naledi's body went cold. "You sold it." Her voice cracked. "Aisha, this is my house. My father's house. You can't just—" But Aisha had already turned away, laughing with one of the guests, pretending nothing was wrong. Naledi stood frozen at the gate, the noise of the party blurring around her. Her father's memories, his smell, his voice. All of it was slipping through her fingers. The home she'd loved and protected had been sold like a piece of furniture. For a long moment, she couldn't move or speak. Then, slowly, she clenched her fists, her eyes burning with silent fury. She wasn't going to let this go. Not this time. Naledi walked away from the house that night without saying another word. Her hands were shaking, but her face stayed calm. She had learned a long time ago that showing emotion around Aisha only gave her more power. The music from the party still echoed behind her as she walked down the quiet street, her heart pounding hard enough to drown it out. Every step felt heavier than the last. Her father's house gone. Sold. Betrayed by the one person she had trusted to at least respect his memory. By the time she reached the taxi rank, her eyes were burning with unshed tears. She forced herself to take a deep breath. "Not yet," she whispered. "Not here." She needed answers first. The next morning, she went straight to her father's old lawyer, Mr. Tambo. His office hadn't changed in years. Stacks of papers, faded photos, and the faint smell of dust and coffee. When he saw her walk in, his face softened. "Naledi, my dear. I was wondering when you'd come." She sat down quickly, her voice tight. "Mr. Tambo, I need to know if someone sold my house. The one my father left me." He sighed heavily, pulled out a thick folder, and placed it on the desk. "I've been meaning to reach you. I received documents about a sale last month, supposedly signed by you. But the signature—" He flipped to the page and turned it around for her to see. The handwriting looked close, almost perfect, but she knew immediately it wasn't hers. "It's forged," she said flatly. He nodded. "Yes. And the buyer? Well, that's another story." He hesitated, then added, "It's Mr. Kojo Mensa. You've heard of him." Naledi's heart sank. Kojo Mensa was a name that carried weight in Cape Coast. A wealthy businessman, known for his flashy cars and shady deals. And worse, she had seen him before. At Aisha's last charity event, smiling beside her in pictures on social media. It hit her all at once. The parties, the sudden guests, the way Aisha had been showing people around the house, as if it were a showroom. She had been planning this for months, maybe longer. Setting the stage, charming the right people, preparing her escape route. Every fake smile now made perfect sense. Naledi's jaw tightened. "She did all this behind my back. And with him." Mr. Tambo leaned forward. "We can stop this. The documents are illegal. I'll help you build a case. But you must be patient." Naledi nodded slowly, her voice calm again. "Patience isn't the problem." She stood, her eyes sharp with quiet fire. It's time she learned who she's really dealing with. As she walked out of the office, the breeze from the ocean brushed against her face. For the first time in days, she didn't feel helpless. The anger was still there, deep and hot, but it was focused now. Aisha had started a war, and Naledi was ready to finish it. The days that followed felt like a storm quietly brewing inside Naledi. On the surface, she moved calmly, but every step she took had purpose. She woke up early, dressed in crisp, simple clothes, and spent her days going from one office to another, determined, focused, and silent about what she was really doing. She met with Mr. Tambo first, sitting across from him in his old office again. He laid out the plan carefully. "We need to prove this house was yours from the start," he said. "Everything must be documented. The will, the deed, and anything that shows your father's signature." Naledi nodded. "I have photos," she said, "from the day he signed the papers. I kept them in one of my old albums." Over the next few days, she combed through her things, dusty boxes filled with memories, faded pictures of her father smiling in front of the house, and the night they'd hung the framed title deed on the wall. She took everything to Mr. Tambo, who scanned and verified each piece of evidence. Then together, they met with officers from the local police station and the property registry. The officers listened closely, flipping through the forged documents that Aisha had used. One of them muttered, "This is a clean job, but it won't hold up." By the end of the week, the case was building fast. The real documents were already flagged in the system, the sale marked under investigation. All they needed now was the right time to make it public, and Aisha, unknowingly, was about to give them the perfect stage. While Naledi worked quietly, Aisha was loud, as always. She started posting pictures on social media about her big business deal. She even threw another party, this time calling it a celebration of success. The house was buzzing again with loud music, glittering lights, and laughter. She invited everyone who mattered, politicians, influencers, business people, and of course Kojo Mensah, the man who thought he owned Naledi's home. The neighborhood watched, whispering about how Aisha had finally made it. Auntie Efua told Naledi everything over the phone, her voice full of disbelief. Your sister is parading that house like she's some queen. You'd think she built it with her bare hand. Naledi listened quietly, her eyes on the folder she had prepared. Let her enjoy it, she said softly. It's almost time. What Aisha didn't know was that every invitation she sent, every picture she posted, was being watched. The police were ready. The documents were verified. The trap was set. As the night of the big party approached, Naledi stood by her window, staring out at the dark sky. The sound of the ocean drifted faintly in the distance. She could almost hear her father's voice reminding her, always protect what you've built. This time she would. And when she walked back into that house, it wouldn't be with anger. It would be with proof, power, and peace. That night, the house sparkled like something out of a movie. Fairy lights wrapped around the trees, music poured from giant speakers, and laughter spilled out into the street. Cars lined the road outside, and waiters in white shirts carried trays of champagne through the crowd. Inside, the once simple home Naledi grew up in looked completely transformed. Marble floors polished, walls covered in gold accents, her father's photos gone. Everything that had once felt warm now looked expensive and fake. At the center of it all stood Aisha, glowing under the lights. Her dress shimmered with silver sequins that caught every camera flash. She held a glass high, surrounded by guests clapping and cheering her name. She looked proud, powerful, exactly the image she had spent months building. To new beginnings and brave decisions, she declared with a smile so wide it almost looked real. The crowd raised their glasses. Some people whistled, others shouted cheers. The music swelled again as cameras clicked. But then the front door opened. The noise didn't stop right away. It faded slowly, like the sound was draining out of the room. People turned to look, curious. Standing in the doorway was Naledi, calm, steady, and sharper than she'd ever looked. She wore a fitted black suit, her hair pulled back neatly. In her hand, she held a single brown envelope. Her heels echoed as she stepped inside. The crowd parted instinctively, unsure what was happening. The only sound left was the soft clinking of glasses being set down. Aisha froze when she saw her. For a moment, the mask slipped. Her confident smile faltered. Her eyes darted nervously. But she quickly forced a laugh, trying to keep control of the room. Naledi, what a surprise. I didn't think you'd make it tonight. Naledi tilted her head slightly, her expression calm. I didn't get an invitation, she said, her voice low but clear. But I thought I'd drop by my own house. The word "my" hung in the air like thunder. The room went silent. Guests exchanged confused looks, whispering to each other. Even the DJ hesitated, his hand hovering over the volume knob. Kojo Mensah, standing near the bar, straightened his jacket, frowning as he studied Naledi. Aisha let out a short, nervous laugh. Your house? Oh, come on, don't be dramatic. We already talked about this. But Naledi didn't move closer or raise her voice. She just looked around slowly, at the chandeliers, the decorations, the strangers filling her father's home, and then back at Aisha. For the first time, Aisha's confident smile didn't look powerful. It looked scared. Naledi took one more step forward, the envelope in her hand catching the light. Let's make this party one to remember, she said softly. And in that quiet moment, before anyone could speak again, everyone in the room knew something was about to explode. Naledi walked slowly to the front of the room, every step echoing against the marble floor. The guests were completely silent now, their eyes following her like she was the only person in the room. Aisha stood frozen, her perfect smile gone, her champagne glass trembling slightly in her hand. The music had stopped, and all that was left was the sharp click of Naledi's heels as she crossed the room. She stopped in front of Kojo Mensah, the wealthy businessman who had bought the house. He looked annoyed, like someone had interrupted a meeting that was beneath him. Naledi met his gaze, calm and unflinching, then handed him the brown envelope she had been carrying. You should probably take a look at this, she said. Kojo frowned but opened it. Inside were neatly arranged papers, official documents, all stamped by the court. As he flipped through them, his expression shifted from irritation to confusion, then to pure anger. The crowd began to whisper. These, Naledi said clearly, her voice strong, are the original ownership documents for this house. The will, the deed, and proof that my father signed them himself. Everything inside this envelope confirms that I am the legal owner. She turned her eyes to Aisha, who had gone completely still. The papers she gave you were forged. Gasps rippled through the room. A few guests covered their mouths. Others turned to look at Aisha in disbelief. The soft clinking of jewelry and murmurs filled the air. This house isn't yours to sell, Naledi continued, her tone steady but sharp. You used my father's forged signature. Every kwacha you took will be repaid, in court. Aisha shook her head quickly, forcing out a weak laugh. That's ridiculous. She's lying. Those are fake. Enough, Kojo snapped, his voice booming through the room. He slammed the papers onto the nearest table, eyes blazing. You told me this was clean, that everything was handled. He turned to Naledi. You mean to tell me this woman scammed me? Naledi met his glare without flinching. You can confirm it yourself. The police already have copies. As if on cue, the front doors opened again. 2 uniformed officers stepped inside, their presence cutting through the tension like a knife. The crowd parted quickly, whispering louder now, phones quietly raised to record. Aisha's face drained of color. Wait, this isn't what it looks like, she stammered, backing up. Kojo, please, I can explain. But Kojo didn't even look at her. Furious, he stormed out of the house, pushing past the guests. The officers approached Aisha slowly. Aisha Mensah? One of them said firmly. You're needed for questioning regarding fraud and property forgery. Tears welled in her eyes as she looked around the room. At the shocked faces, the phones filming her humiliation, the sister she'd betrayed standing tall and calm before. For the first time, Aisha had nothing to say. Room buzzed with whispers. Guests leaned toward each other, their voices low but eager, some shocked, others clearly enjoying the drama unfolding right before. The fairy lights that had once made the house glow now felt harsh and cold. Aisha stood in the center, her glittering dress catching the light as tears began to streak down her face. The confidence she'd worn all evening was gone. Naledi, please, she started, her voice trembling. You don't understand. I was desperate. Mama's debts were piling up. I just needed. Naledi didn't let her finish. Her tone was calm, almost too calm. You stole from your own family, she said. You turned my home into your stage. Now you'll face the music. The words landed like a slap. Aisha's shoulders sank. She looked around for help, but no one moved. The same guests who'd clapped for her toast minutes ago now avoided her. Even her so-called friends edged away quietly, pretending to check their phones or sip their drinks. The police officers stepped forward. Ma'am, please come with us, one said firmly. Aisha backed up, shaking her head. Wait, please. Naledi, I didn't mean for it to go this far. I thought I could fix it before you found out. Her voice cracked as she spoke, her mascara smudging under her tears. Please, you're my sister. Naledi looked at her, and for a brief second, something flickered in her eyes, a trace of old love, old pain. But it faded just as quickly. You stopped being my sister when you sold our father's home, she said quietly. Aisha's knees seemed to weaken. One officer gently took her arm, and the other opened the door. As they led her out, the guests stepped aside, the sound of her heels dragging softly against the tile. She looked back one last time, her face wet and broken. Naledi, she whispered. But Naledi didn't flinch. She just stood there, tall and still, watching until the door closed behind her. The music never started again. The crowd slowly began to disperse. Some whispered apologies, others just slipped away, leaving behind half-eaten food, spilled drinks, and the faint smell of expensive perfume. Within minutes, the mansion was nearly empty, just Naledi standing alone in the middle of the house that had started everything. She walked slowly through the rooms, her eyes moving over every corner, the walls she had painted, the tiles her father had chosen, the space that had once been filled with laughter. The noise, the betrayal, the chaos, it was all gone now. Naledi exhaled, a deep breath that seemed to lift years of weight off her chest. For the first time in a long time, the house was quiet, peaceful, hers. She closed her eyes for a moment and smiled faintly. Her father had built this home with love, and now, finally, it felt like that love had found its way back to her. Weeks passed, but the story refused to fade. It was everywhere, on the radio, online, and in the gossip column. People called it the Stepsister scandal. The headline photos showed Aisha walking into court in dark glasses, her head bowed, her once glamorous life stripped away. The woman who had bragged about her business success was now the face of betrayal. Naledi didn't bother reading most of the article. She didn't need to. She was there when it all fell apart. Now, all she wanted was peace. Her days slowly found rhythm again. The first thing she did was start restoring the house. She called back the same carpenter her father used to work with. Together, they replaced the shiny gold furniture Aisha had filled the house with. Gone were the crystal chandeliers and velvet couches. In their place came simple, warm pieces made of wood, things that felt real. She polished her father's old desk, hung back the family photos, and even found the little clay pot he used to keep on the veranda. The house began to breathe again. Every room told a story she remembered. Her father teaching her how to draw blueprints in the study, their Sunday dinners in the small dining room, the smell of his favorite cologne that still lingered faintly in the... She moved through the space slowly, like she was learning it all over again. One afternoon, as the sun poured softly through the living room windows, there was a knock on the gate. Naledi opened it to find her stepmother standing there, older, thinner, and looking nervous. Her eyes were red, her hands clutching a small handbag tightly. "Naledi," she started, her voice cracking. "I came to say I'm sorry. I know Aisha went too far, but please, she was only trying to help me. The debts, they were mine. I should have stopped her." Naledi listened quietly. She didn't interrupt. She just stood there, her expression calm but unreadable. When her stepmother finished speaking, there was a long silence between them, heavy and filled with everything they'd never said. Finally, Naledi spoke softly but firmly. "I've already forgiven you," she said. "But forgiveness doesn't mean letting you in again." Her stepmother's eyes welled up. She nodded slowly, as if she knew that was the only answer she would get. Without another word, she turned and walked away, her footsteps fading down the street. Naledi watched her go, then closed the gate gently. She wasn't angry anymore, just done. Some endings didn't need shouting or tears. Sometimes peace meant choosing distance. That evening, she made herself tea and sat on the porch where her father used to sit every morning. The air felt lighter, the house quiet and still. For the first time in years, it didn't feel like a battleground. It felt like home again, hers and hers alone. Months later, the house looked completely different, not grand or flashy but peaceful. The kind of peace that came from quiet mornings and honest company. Naledi decided to host a small gathering, nothing like the loud parties Aisha once threw. Just a few close friends, soft music, and the smell of home-cooked food filling the air. The sun dipped low as laughter floated through the yard. Her friends teased her about finally taking a break from work, and she laughed along, relaxed for the first time in ages. They sat around the same table her father had built years ago, its surface now smooth and shining again. There were no photographers, no fake smiles, only warmth, real conversations, and the gentle sound of the sea in the distance. Later that evening, after everyone had gone, Naledi stood in the middle of the compound, taking in the quiet. Fairy lights twinkled softly along the fence, and the breeze carried the scent of salt and hibiscus. She looked around at the house she had fought for, not because it was big or beautiful, but because it was part of her story. In her mind, her father's voice played like a memory. "Take care of what you love, Nail." She smiled. Her voice, calm and steady, echoed in her thoughts. "Sometimes you lose everything to remember what's yours. They sold my peace, my father's memory, but I took it all back." She walked to the gate, turned the key, and locked it gently. The golden light of sunset spilled over the walls, warm and soft against her face. She whispered to herself, almost like a promise. "My father built this house with love. I rebuilt it with strength." And with that she smiled, peaceful, strong, and finally free. "Fade out,"